I didn't have the right stream. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and weekend for the Baltimore Orioles up in the Bronx. Luke Jones going to join us now on the backside of yet another exciting and long, rambling WrestleMania. First things first, Luke, how was WrestleMania?
It was good, but long. I said to you when you asked me initially about it, it kind of reminds you of a great baseball game that ends up going 16 or 17 innings. Like when it happens, you're like, okay, that's fine, but you don't go into it hoping that it goes 16 or 17 innings. It just kind of drags a little bit after that. But it was good. I enjoyed it. WrestleMania weekend, the Super Bowl weekend for wrestling fans, and most of the weekend certainly lived up to that.
Anything you want to say about it specifically? I mean, I saw images of John Cena coming through and Undertakers and different things, but it's a little bit like General Hospital and the Ice Princess. I'm not really in on the soap opera anymore.
I'll let you in on the biggest secret that is absolutely becoming my favorite part of pro wrestling. It's actually WWE's developmental brand, NXT. They had their show on Saturday night. That was 3 hours. That was kind of the traditional, it was 2.5 to 3 hours. That's kind of the traditional time of pay-per-views. That stole the weekend. That was fantastic. And I kind of knew WrestleMania wasn't going to live up to that and basically proved to be correct. But NXT was my favorite part of the weekend. And the thing I'll say about WrestleMania that lived up to expectations and surpassed, Ronda Rousey being part of it. I had very low expectations for her, considering she's never been a pro wrestler before, and she looked really good. She actually looked like she has the potential to be really, really good in that environment. So it was fun. You mentioned Taker and Cena. That was cool, but like I said, it dragged on, and Brock Lesnar ended up retaining the Universal title, which was a big surprise because he, by all accounts, is headed to UFC. So very interested to see what ends up happening there.
Well, and the other, part of this, the Andre the Giant documentary comes out too, which, that'll be right up there with the Ric Flair one a couple of weeks ago, and obviously done a little differently this time around, but that's going to be worth conversation for sure.
Oh, no question about it, and I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I know some of the reviews that different wrestling people do ahead of time and different critics do ahead of time, really, really like it. I mean, I think anyone who followed the career, the life of Andre the Giant, so many things that were just incredible, but also there was a sadness there, and I think this documentary will cover that. And it's interesting from a standpoint of Hulk Hogan, who's really been kind of cast aside for obviously the controversy from a few years ago. He's one of the big voices in this, so I think that's interesting. But I mean, Andre the Giant's been gone for it's crazy to think 25 years now. It's going to be cool to see some of those images and hear his story told, and parts of that story I hope have not been told before.
Is there anything such as rare footage anymore with YouTube? I mean, like, literally, I watched the 2.5-minute liner, for that when it came out. Showtime sent me over, or is it HBO? It's HBO, isn't it?
It's HBO, yeah.
They sent me over a liner for it, the 90-second reel, and I watched it. And now on my YouTube, YouTube thinks I'm obsessed with Andre the Giant. So, everything that's up is Rowdy Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan and, all the wrestlers of that era telling, Dusty Rhodes telling old, Andre the Giant stories. So I have a feeling the afterglow of this thing will be a nice week long, and for anyone in the wrestling space. And by the way, before I even get to baseball, I'll say this. My timeline is overtaken by WrestleMania on WrestleMania night. Maybe it's the Dundalk in me. But, on top of that, a lot of my friends went, and I know it's something that you and your brother really have on your bucket list. Speaking of New York, and maybe our segue is it's going to be in New York next year, right?
Yeah, and it was in at MetLife Stadium. I think it was 2013, 2014, something. I think 13. I think it was, and it's coming back there. But yeah, I'll be totally honest. Other than covering or attending a World Series game at Camden Yards, WrestleMania is probably at the top of my list now. And I know it's not a.
What are we up to? 30-something? How many we are to? 30.
This was WrestleMania 34.
34.
This past
Okay.
year. I mean, it's what's really crazy to me is they've gotten to the point where they don't brand what number it is anymore, and I think that's nuts. Why? I mean, I think one of the coolest thing about the Super Bowl is you always hear what number.
You know what, man? His deal would be, well, the Super Bowl does that, so we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
we're not going to do what the NFL does. That's what he's doing.
I suppose, and I guess maybe that's fair now with the XFL coming back in a couple years. But yeah, I mean, it's WrestleMania 34, and it's funny. I was talking to my brother about this. I can recall the Attitude Era, which WWF and WCW. I mean, the popularity really blew up.
Crotch chop era
in the late '90s. I mean, you had the NWO and WCW. You had DX, Austin. The Rock became popular. And
well, Flair,
so
Sting, all those guys were still working too.
Yeah, but it was so funny to think, and that was roughly WrestleMania 14, WrestleMania 15, and at the time. From that time period going back to Hogan's heyday and The Rock and wrestling and Hogan and Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3, that felt like such a long time ago. And now I look back at the Attitude Era, and that's nearly 20 years ago now, and it just makes me feel really old.
Yeah, Shawn Michaels is 60 now, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's The Undertaker came back, and he's 53 years old now, which we see him once a year now, and last year was supposedly going to be his retirement match, and he's basically like Peyton Manning right now, or Ray Lewis, or whoever you want to talk about at the end of their playing career. He's done enough for the business. He's been the franchise guy for such a long time that short of them locking the door and saying you're not welcome here anymore because you're too old, he's at the point now where it's he's too old if we're being honest, but he's done so much for the company that if he wants to come back and wrestle once a year, then who's going to stop him short of Vince McMahon having just no heart whatsoever and saying, I don't want you here anymore.
Not Luke Jones or his brother. That's who will not be stopping him.
As I said, for a 7-hour wrestling show, we can afford to take 20 minutes for a nostalgia act. I'm cool with that.
He is Luke Jones. He covers all things Orioles, Ravens, and WrestleMania, but only once a year. And, I'm sure he'll be back for what's the second? They don't do the Great American Bash anymore, do they?
No, they have a pay-per-view every month. I can't keep the names. They still have the big four: Mania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and Royal Rumble, and then they have about 10 other shows they mix in over the course.
I could not have named the Masters, British Open, U.S. Open. Yeah, I could not have named that for wrestling. I would have fallen way short. I was giving you what did I say? It was the thing used to be at the Omni, right? Starrcade, right? Remember Starrcade?
Right, Starrcade. And WWE actually had a house show in Greensboro, and they called it Starrcade this past fall. It was actually kind of neat. It wasn't a televised event; it was just a house show. But they hyped it up and they catered to old WCW fans.
Did Nate come and give one last woo?
It's Charlotte, his daughter, who's actually one of the women's champions on one of the two shows. She's really, really good, by the way. I mean, I'm not huge into women's wrestling, but they've made it so much more impactful than it's ever been.
Well, she was a huge part of the documentary too.
Yeah. But Charlotte Flair, his daughter, her real name's Ashley, but her stage name's Charlotte Flair. She's kind of the Hulk Hogan of the women's division right now. She's really, really good. So she was kind of one of the.
She does the woo thing, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
Nice,
and she is. I think she's probably I think she's 30, 31. She actually got into the business a little bit late compared to other women.
Well, or compared to David Flair, right?
Yeah, but she is extremely talented. You can definitely tell she comes from a pretty special bloodline as it comes to sports entertainment.
Well, you can tell we come from a special bloodline, Dundalk, around here, because we feature WrestleMania reviews around here.
Yeah, of course.
He is Luke at WNST.net as well as Baltimore Lake. All right, let's get to, don't bore us, get to the chorus here. I don't know that the Orioles are going to be any good this year, but if their baseball and their, what does Buck say, the want to, is there for you as it was over the weekend against the Yankees, I'll take it. It was entertaining baseball. I am not going to pretend that I was awake late until 1 o'clock in the morning when Pedro Alvarez was hitting walk-off grand slams, or even when Michael Givens was using his crotch to block home plate in the 11th inning late into the evening. But we saw it all over the weekend, Yankees and Orioles. They certainly left it all out on the field in the Bronx, didn't they?
There's no question about that. I mean, that first of all, and it sounds funny saying this because, I mean, we're just now getting into mid-May, or mid-April, excuse me. I can't recall a series that had such entertainment value, such drama, such weird, bizarre things that happened. I mean, Friday night's game that went 14 innings, Pedro Alvarez hits the grand slam. There was the weird rundown play at third base where the Orioles actually should have turned a double play, and the umpires kicked the call, and they admitted it afterwards. There was the play with Givens at home plate. There was fantastic bullpen work over the course of the entire series.
There were crazy escapes. I mean, the Yankees had the bases loaded and nobody out in extra innings, down a run, and they lost the game. I mean, they didn't even plate the tying run. Caleb Joseph takes some credit for that. Gentry made an unbelievable defensive play. I mean, there was everything. I mean, it had the full Monty, and it had bad weather, too. It had kind of October awful weather, too.
Yeah, it really did. And I think what the encouraging part is, and look, I mean, this is why we said when the Orioles were 1-5 that it's 6 games. Certainly there are issues. And look, all those issues from those first 6 games don't go away just because they won 3 out of 4, but it's a reminder of we're 10 games into this thing. We're into week 2 now if we're talking about the NFL. I mean, that's, by do the math. I mean, 1 football game is, the equivalent of about 10 baseball games. I mean, it's just, the ebbs and flows of a season. But I think what's encouraging for me is Dylan Bundy did not pitch in that 4-game series. Alex Cobb did not pitch in that 4-game series. You look at the Orioles, and their lineup is still not firing on all cylinders by any stretch of the imagination. They didn't play perfect baseball. There were some defensive issues. There were some different things that happened. They squandered some opportunities to score runs throughout the weekend at various points. And, oh, by the way, the Yankees certainly aren't firing on all cylinders, and they're dealing with some injuries, and their $300 million hitter in Giancarlo Stanton has been woeful. But all of that aside, the Orioles, who were struggling mightily over their first couple series, had the rough 3-game sweep in Houston. They come to New York 1-5, a place where they didn't just go 2-8, didn't just give up over 100 runs, but they were rarely competitive in those 8 losses. I think you go back and look at those 10 games played in the Bronx last year, and they were competitive in maybe 3 or 4 of those. That's how lopsided this AL East rivalry was in 2017. And the Orioles figure out a way to take 3 out of 4. I mean, it just, like you said, does it mean they're going to win 90 games this year? I mean, I'm not changing my tune, just like I wasn't going to change my prediction after they were 1-5. It's way too early, and as I always say, you have to let the season breathe, but that was still a pretty nice statement that the Orioles made over the weekend, and considering they didn't play flawless baseball by any stretch of the imagination, and they were able to take 3 out of 4, you take some satisfaction in coming home now, trying to get that bullpen rested up any way you can. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of work they had over this 4-game series. Their bullpen covered 25 innings over the 4-game series, and you see what happens with Toronto, and then you move on after that. But was really, really entertaining baseball. And on Sunday, I mean, we mentioned Pedro Alvarez on Friday night. On Sunday, think about some of the heroes: Anthony Santander, Craig Gentry, Pedro Araujo. I'll figure out how to pronounce that correctly and consistently.
By the time he's gone. You know how to say Nestor Cortez Jr.
You know what, though? And it's funny you mention that. I'm still looking to see what they really see in Nestor Cortez. Araujo, I've at least seen enough flashes from him. And think about what he did on Sunday. I mean, not only did he keep the Yankees off the scoreboard for 2 1/3 innings, but he struck out 5. I mean, he definitely has, a fastball that has enough velocity. It's, low to mid-90s, and he's got a breaking ball that can get swings and misses. I at least see the potential with him. I at least understand what's intriguing about him. I can't say the same about Cortez, to this point, although we've only seen him a few times, so I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But, man, the Rule 5 guys and Craig Gentry, who, at sometimes you kind of tease and say, this guy might as well be Craig Showalter the way Buck loves him so much. But they really had some unlikely sources of the heroics over the course of the weekend. And, hey, you're going to beat a team like the Yankees on the road, 3 out of 4. You're going to need some contributions from someone other than your biggest stars on the team.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke, out on Twitter as the Birds now bring it home for a couple of days against Toronto Blue Jays. Day off on Thursday, much needed. And then off to Boston for 4 games, including the weird morning game next Monday on Patriots Day, and then off to Detroit before a lengthy homestand here. Certainly appointed themselves well over the weekend and sort of vultured some games they might not have won, right? I mean, they could have easily lost all 4. I don't want to say they could have won all 4. Obviously, they could have, but at a much different place than where they were against Houston and Minnesota from a competitive standpoint. But, boy, have they worn out the pitching, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and part of it's just you played 2 extra inning games. I mean, you're going to have some of that. I mean, the Yankees are dealing with that right now as well. I think the Yankees have the off day Monday, so that helps them as they turn their sights elsewhere. But it's really tough, and for a team that, I mean, you're just hoping over the course of this series you have Bundy going on Monday night, you have Cashner going on Tuesday night, and Kevin Gausman, who was better in his last start, still wasn't particularly good, but was at least solid against the Yankees. You're just praying that those 3 can not only give you competitive outings, but can give you some length. I mean, you need to get that bullpen back in order. I mean, we've already seen the Norfolk shuttle start to ramp up. We saw Jacobonis on Saturday. We saw Tanner Scott, who pitched pretty well on Sunday, in a tight spot. I mean, it was clear they weren't going to use Michael Givens, and you have Tanner Scott pitching with a 1-run lead in the 7th inning at Yankee Stadium. I mean, go figure. For a kid who got little more than a cup of coffee last September, who they really like, but still has some a ways to go to firmly establish himself. So they've really got some pitching from some unlikely sources. I'm guessing you're going to see some more roster moves over the next day or two for them to at least get a little bit of a reinforcement or two. But it has been very taxing. And the good news, and we talk about this all the time with any extra inning game, whenever you have a game that goes 13 or 14 innings, you hope that you get the return of a win because you know that that's going to impact you for sometimes the next week or two, depending on what kind of starting pitching you get after that. But it's really tough to catch up on that. And I'd be remiss right now if I didn't mention the work that Richard Blyer did. I mean, he pitches 3 straight days, the 3rd straight day he's pitching, even though he didn't pitch much on Saturday, only threw a few pitches, but 3rd straight game he was pitching, and he pitches 3 scoreless innings. I mean, this guy's amazing. I mean, he doesn't, you look at the strikeout rate, doesn't throw hard. You kind of look at him and say, this isn't going to last. This isn't going to last. We said that all last year, and he comes in and he gets results. He gets those ground balls. He gets a lot of weak contact, and he just gets the job done. And when you consider where they were with the rest of their bullpen, and they weren't going to use Givens on Sunday. They obviously didn't want to use Nestor Cortez if they didn't have to. And
they did use 7 pitchers on Sunday, even after everybody was worn out, right?
Right. I mean, you think about it. I mean, Mike Wright lasted 2/3 of an inning. I mean, just think about this. You have a game that goes 12 innings, and that's challenging enough. And your starting pitcher got knocked out with 2 outs in the 1st inning, and you're down 5-0. I mean, how many teams in that scenario just? They lose by 12 runs. They try, they're using.
Or they're pitching Rick Dempsey or Elrod Hendricks.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw Ryan Flaherty pitch for the Orioles. Not that terribly.
Chris Davis
long
has
ago.
pitched as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Flaherty, that was more of a case they were losing so badly that you just didn't want to waste it. But these guys manned up. Their bullpen threw almost 200 pitches on Sunday. And they gave up 2 runs over 11 1/3 innings.
But let's see what that does, turning that around the next couple of days, because
exactly.
It should have an effect, and I expect it to have an effect. And, the whole American League, everybody's feeling everybody out this time of year, right? Like, everybody was watching golf on Sunday and figuring things out. I mean, even as the excitement of the Yankees series unfolded, I'm pretty convinced 80% of the Orioles fans were watching the golf tournament.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about that. I'm not a golf guy.
No, I hear you, but
yeah,
I stayed with the baseball game.
I mean, it's the Masters. I'm not going to be tone deaf to what that tournament means to people who really love golf.
Well, the Red Sox have gotten off to a hell of a start. I mean, they're doing their thing. They're the team you don't want to see right now, and the Orioles are going to see them over the weekend.
Yeah, and I mean that's certainly. I mean, at some point they're going to cool off a little bit here, but they certainly they've taken the early lead in the American League East, and if I'm the Red Sox, and full disclosure, I mean I picked the Red Sox to win this division. I mean and look, we're 10 games into this thing, so I'm not predicting the Yankees' demise by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought there were more question marks about that Yankees team than some people wanted to lend credence to, and I think you've seen some of those question marks already pop up. I mean, no one expected Stanton was going to come close to hitting 60 home runs again, but he's really struggling, and he's already being booed, and I think some people forget as much as he was an MVP last year, this guy's had some injuries over the last 5 years. He's had some inconsistencies at times, probably more than you'd like for a guy that is on the kind of insane contract that the Yankees.
Yeah, I was going to say, dude, I mean, he had a nice little all-star game, and he's a nice player and whatever.
He's a really good
and he's
player.
toiling away in anonymity in Miami the way Goldschmidt's toiling away in anonymity out in there. I mean, I hear all that, but, boy, Yankee Stadium, you come in there, you get the Ed Woodson treatment on the first week. Look out, right?
Well, and I'll say this, and look, I mean, the fact that you're booing a guy, and they were booing him at the beginning of this homestand, I mean, it's silly when you really think about it, but it's New York, and he's had 2 5-strikeout games on this homestand.
What is that? It's not even like the Golden Sombrero. What the hell is 5?
I can't even.
Is there a name for that?
The Chris Davis? I don't know. But I mean, he's really struggled, and Sabathia's on the DL for them. They lost Bird. I mean, they're dealing with some health issues, and I think that rotation is. I think it's good, but I don't think it's necessary. I put it this way: I'd take the top of the Red Sox rotation over the top of the Yankees rotation.
How about this, dude? They're 4 games in against a team we think might be a 500 team in the Orioles, and getting kicked around a little bit and losing some games they probably should have won. I'd be a little concerned about the Yankees. I mean, as we leave New York now, and when's the next time we see them? We see them, let me look down here. We see them my wife's birthday, May 31st. So June 1st, Memorial Day, we'll see them after that, right? So we got 6 weeks to see them. They're 5-5 as we leave. They're not going to be much more than a handful of games over 5. They're not going to be a juggernaut. I don't. They have a lot of things going on, right? They have a new manager, a lot of young players, a new young star, a bunch of young stars with a lot of expectations. Dude, that's not Mantle and Reggie Jackson over there, That's not a proven commodity over there. There's a lot of might-be's and a lot of, well, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, and he's going to be a great player, and he's going to be a $300 million. It's early up there. It's early late in New York already because the expectations of the Pinstripes are on them this year.
They really are, and I will remind everyone, the 2016 Astros. Think about 15. They made it to the wild card game. They beat the Yankees in that game. Everyone's just completely enamored with their young talent, and rightfully so, by the way. And then you saw what happened in 2016. They got off to a woeful start, and they never really recovered. I think one of the biggest things that people forget about young teams. And look, the Yankees, I mean, their potential there is through the roof with the young talent that they have. The fact that they're under the luxury tax threshold this year, so that's going to reset, and they're going to go out and sign Manny Machado or Bryce Harper or maybe both of them. Who knows? But I think with young teams in general, there's this assumption that they're just going to steadily ascend, and there aren't going to be those hiccups. The first time that they taste success, and then it's all over after that, right? I mean, they're going to win 5 titles in the next 10 years.
They call that a slump in baseball. We'll see how they do.
It doesn't always work that way. And the Astros were a perfect example of that. So that was kind of my one word of caution. Look, I still predict the Yankees to be a wild card team, but I didn't understand why they were getting so much more love than the Red Sox, for example, who are also a young team, and they have a new manager too. So that's something to keep in mind, certainly for them as well. But I think the Red Sox, who won the division last year, I think some people were overlooking them a little bit. And, look, I mean, they're 8-1 right now. That could change dramatically, in just a few days when we're talking about the rest of the league. But I think it's just a reminder of, just because a young team kind of blows up and all of a sudden you feel like they're ahead of schedule, that doesn't mean that they're going to stay ahead of schedule. And I think that's just something to keep in mind about the Yankees as they're dealing with some injuries. And look, Severino was great for them last year, made that rotation by and large better across the board. But let's see him duplicate that. Let's see how Sonny Gray truly handles pitching in New York. Let's see if CC Sabathia can fight off Father Time another year. Let's see if Jordan Montgomery can duplicate what he did last year, which was pretty solid for the Yankees. There's still some question marks there before people that were predicting them to win 102 games. I wasn't seeing that, and maybe they still will. They still will do that, but I think they're going to have a couple more bumps in the road than people think. And I'm in agreement with you. When the Orioles see them again in late May as the calendar turns to June, I will agree. I'd be very surprised if they're 15 games over 500 at that point.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by the Baltimore Brigade. The home opener is Friday night against the Washington Valor. You can go to BaltimoreBrigade.com and learn more. I'm wearing my Brigade hat here. I'll be wearing it all week long. Also brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. Branches now throughout Baltimore and Maryland. Go find one around the corner from you. I'm drinking out of my Howard Bank cup here and getting my day off to a great start, as I always do at Rofo. We gassed up there. I picked up some chicken and some Western fries last week. When you're gassing up and you use the Rofo app, you accumulate the points for the freebies, as Justin Tucker always likes to say amidst his Kona Blend coffee. So get on out to Royal Farms real fresh, real fast. Download the app. Make sure you're doing that when you are pumping gas. We're going to be doing some viewing parties for the Cavs for games 3 and 4 next week. I'll have some more information about that up on the internet as well. All of our WNST programming and our Thursday community series, not only brought to you by Howard Bank, but also brought to you by Cole Roofing, doing the commercial roofing thing. The wind, the rain, the weather, then comes the sun this summer. Get your roof checked out before the summer goes. If you have a large commercial space, if you have a big roof, don't let it goof on your roof. Call Cole Roofing and my pal Bill Cole. He'll be here later on in the week. We'll be talking some Oriole baseball as well as some Caps playoffs with him. Luke is with us right now. He went from WrestleMania definitely into baseball. You mentioned the Yankees. They're going to Fenway the rest of the week. So the Yankees and the Red Sox, boy, the Yankees could find themselves pretty far under here. And the Orioles could find themselves in a world of hurt walking into Boston this weekend. If the Red Sox continue this sort of pace, they could really put some distance between them and everybody else. They're playing great baseball right now.
Yeah, they definitely are. And again, I mean, it's early. We saw the Orioles get off to a good start last year, and we saw how much that is worth. But certainly Boston, I mean, they've pitched well. I think they've given up 26 runs in their first 9 games. I mean, look at their numbers compared to the Orioles and the Rays and the Yankees. I mean, it's
team ERA under 3, by the way. Now that helps that you beat Tampa Bay up for a couple of days too.
Sure, and that's I mean, again, this goes back to you let the season breathe. I mean, really short of those teams like Tampa Bay, who start 1-8, where you're already putting yourself in such a hole. You kind of you have to let this play out for a while, and that's why I was saying, as much as the Orioles looked dreadful in the final 2 games of the Minnesota series, as much as the Houston series was frustrating because they had a chance to win 2 of those 3 and didn't do it, obviously, you still have to let it play out. And I mean, the Orioles now, 4-6, which isn't great by any stretch of the imagination. It's 400 baseball, but compared to 1-5, it doesn't feel so bad. So I think you see what happens against Toronto. You want to win 2 out of 3 at home, certainly. And then you see what happens at Fenway, as you mentioned. Do the Yankees get themselves righted a little bit? Does Boston come back to earth? This starts to take shape over the next few weeks, and basically, to me, the first significant checkpoint, so to speak, is Memorial Day, and that's when you kind of start to see teams separating a bit. I think the teams that are really bad, by then are bad, and then the teams that are really, really good and are at least going to be in it for the duration, they're the ones that have risen to the top by Memorial Day. So we still have a ways to go for that. But the Orioles here in the short term, they need to get their bullpen right. Healthy. Those guys did a heck of a job in New York. But, man, you just look at some of the pitch counts over the weekend. Even just Sunday alone, Araujo, 34 pitches. Castro, 35 pitches. Tanner Scott, 32 pitches. O'Day, 22 pitches. Blyer, 42 pitches. And Brad Brock, who did a heck of a Don Stanhouse impression on Sunday afternoon, he threw 21 pitches. So, at some point they need to get some length from their starters. And, it'd be nice to see their offense be the group that jumps out early and they have a 5 or 6-1 lead or something like that where the starter can get into that cruise mode a little bit, and maybe you win a couple games in regulation and don't have to go 12 or 14 innings like they did over this weekend.
All right, well, we will buckle up our chin straps and get ready for some more baseball this week. We're awaiting the NFL schedule probably next week, then the NFL draft after that, the aftermath of the Masters, WrestleMania, and Orioles weekend at Yankee Stadium with some wild games and getting ready for Caps hockey around here. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our newest partner. We are, I love saying the words Modell here. The Modell Lyric is now our partner. The Wild Krat Show going on Sunday. If you have kids, you want to take them down and do something awesome, the 4:30 show, there still are tickets left for the Wild Krats live performance on Sunday. Also, Britt Floyd on the 26th, Jackson Brown on May 3rd, and they've just announced Kansas and Steely Dan coming this fall to the Modell Lyric. They are our partner. We're going to be sending everybody out to modell-lyric.com for more information there. Also, our partners at King Discount Liquors, lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore, plus the best television commercials that I'm not even in. Johnny Bev and Paul King doing the new baseball commercials. If you see them, tell them I enjoy watching them. Get out to Rosedale, to Pulaski Highway, and give the King a ring. Pick me up a bottle of Malbec because I'm fresh out. Box Hill Pizzeria, the best crab cakes in Harford County, can now be shipped anywhere in the world. They are remodeling their dining area. So you've been going to Box Hill for years up in Abingdon, Bel Air area, Harford County. They're extending their dining room now out toward the road, so you'll see the remnants of that. They're hoping to get that thing up and running and perfected in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, stop by, get a pizza, get a crab cake. It is Box Hill Pizzeria, our long-term sponsor. Baltimore Luke and Luke at WNST.net, the way to find him. We'll be monitoring all things Orioles and Blue Jays from Camden Yards as we await football draft and await the Caps getting started against the Columbus Blue Jackets on Thursday night with hockey. We got some viewing parties next week as well. Anything you missed, you can find in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Nasty at WNST.net finds me as well. Don't forget, our morning newspaper ships courtesy of Planet Fitness, but also includes the Maryland Jockey Club entries for the weekend for Laurel. They had huge payouts and huge carryovers going on out there as well with the Rainbow. We're going to be talking to Stan Salter about all the racing coming up, including the Kentucky Derby coming up in a couple of weeks. My wife and I are going to be down at Laurel for the Derby on the 5th, and then, of course, out at Pimlico for the Pink, the Black-Eyed Susan, and the Preakness. All of the entries on the front page at WNST.net, as well as a part of our morning newspaper. Breaking news, you don't ever have to worry when you're on the WNST tech service. You get it first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Colatzos will be here this week joining us. Luke and I will join him on Thursday as we get ready for the weekend in Boston for the Orioles, as well as a great week and weekend of hockey. It is the most wonderful time of the year if you love the puck. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.